Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This is, I believe, episode 9 of Chine On, here with Michael Boly. Thank you very much for joining me, man. It's good to talk to you.
Pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, I mean, if you could, I'll give people a little background on how we met. We met at Podcast Movement in Nashville earlier this month. Uh, we just walked in, I think, the first orientation room, sat down at your table, and then after that presentation thing, we ended up talking for like an hour afterwards.
I
But
know.
yeah, I mean, I got a lot out of that thing. But hey, man, if you could just let people know who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of jump into it.
Yeah, for sure. Man, and this is a change of pace too. I swear on my show, I'm so oh man, dude, I talk fast. I'm gonna try to slow it down a little bit here.
Do honestly, do your thing, man. This
All
is
right.
there's no rhyme or reason here. You don't need to go fast.
Cool. Well, let me give you a little bit of an overview of a background. So I'm currently where I am now. I'm fourth year in my computer science degree. I'm out of Oregon from Portland, born and raised there. One older brother, two awesome parents, and you notice I study computer science, but really I started getting into sales pretty early, and sales was my kind of lead into learning a lot about personal development and self-improvement, and I just got stuck on that topic because I thought it was so interesting, and it ended up helping me so much that I started teaching other people and wanting to share those ideas. And that's kind of how a little bit how this podcast came about. My show, Control Shift Mindset, it's all about teaching these personal development topics and concepts to young adults and college students from a young age so that they can actually benefit from them for the rest of their life. So I'm a host on the podcast. I also run a relatively small SaaS company. So
Oh,
that's
really?
yeah, yeah.
Whoa. Okay, I didn't know that.
I because I used my computer science skills, I wanted to use them for something, and I still think that stuff is interesting. But long run, I just want to be an entrepreneur. So I don't plan on going into software engineering for somebody, at least not for very long. And so I did develop a small SaaS product, and I partnered with actually the manager of my sales office to then sell it across the company to other sales managers and sales offices. And so that's kind of a second project on the side. And I also do a little bit of sales here and there, and that's kind of my active income because this is still kind of starting up, as you know. We're getting started.
Sure.
It's been a month and a half since we launched the podcast, and it's been a lot of fun since then.
Yeah, man, it's cool. I've listened to a couple episodes and it's pretty cool to see somebody your age doing this stuff and just going out and just fucking doing it, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it is awesome. I mean, it's something that I got kind of hung up on maybe when I was younger, and I kind of wish I didn't. And it was part of, you don't know what's going to happen. You just got to keep moving forward. Um, but wait, so talk to me about this SaaS company. What does your company do?
Yeah. So it's called Team Tracker, and it's based off of a Chrome extension. The entire thing is built
Okay.
off of Google's platform, pretty much using their ability to make Chrome extensions. And essentially, you have these sales offices that recruit people only to send out social media messages. And they have no way, or at least their way of kind of tracking the messages being sent was having those representatives or those employees send screenshots of their Instagram feed. And it was terrible, and it sucked because you have to go all the
What?
way through. You have to be scrolling through all of these independently sent screenshots of Instagram, and so there was really no way that they had that was easy to get that stuff tracked. And so basically what the Chrome extension does, it gives them the exact date, time, when the message was sent, who it was sent to, who sent it, and if it was the first message sent or if it was a message in a conversation, like if they replied. It basically just allows them to track and manage those employees sending out those messages.
Wow.
So
Okay. And this is for recruiting?
yeah, this is for basically recruiting more sales representatives for the office.
Damn, dude. So how did you see this opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it came about by my sales manager, the manager of my office, bringing up the the idea that there's a new program that's starting. A new program is starting in the company for recruiting people to do these messages, to send out these Instagram messages. It didn't used to be a thing. Like a year ago, wasn't a thing really. So it's just starting. It's brand new. So there's an opportunity to fill that gap and provide that solution for those offices because obviously there was just nothing. There was nothing there for them to be able to manage it. So that was where the initial idea came from. He was like, "Hey, there's an opportunity here," and I was like, "You know what? I could try to figure out a way to make that happen." And slowly and over the past year, I've I built something that was kind of a very minimum viable product, and then we pushed it out and got good responses from it, and now we're just kind of growing it from there. So
Nice. Okay. So you had your own company basically as a customer kind of to start. Is that right?
um, I was a sales representative of the office, and my manager brought me the idea because he knows that I knew computer science, that I knew how to program, and so the program, the business, what it's meant for, the Chrome extension is for helping sales offices. So basically, we go to other managers of other sales offices because essentially my manager was saying, "Hey, this is something I could really use personally. Like, even if nobody
Sure.
else used it, I could really use this." So, yeah, that's the relationship.
Okay, nice. And then so you're expanding that out now?
Yeah, yeah. At this point, Google, if you didn't know, Google's verification process is tricky sometimes. And it's been maybe the past month now. I've been trying to work through Google's verification process to get our app verified because, as I told you, it's all on Google's platform. So they need to know that things are all good on their end for them to allow you to push it out to a broader audience. So that's been the process so far.
Okay, so you're going through this approval process and dealing with all those hurdles and hoops that you got to jump through.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds
Exactly.
fun. Are they
Yeah.
I thought because okay, I thought Google was kind of like the Wild West in terms of the App Store. Is that just wrong or is that how it used to be? Or the Google
It
Play?
Yeah, this is new actually. This verification process actually they just implemented I think in the past year. Like just during the pandemic, they added this for they basically said if you are submitting something that you want to be public, if you want it to be private, then no problem. If you want it to be only for like test users and like under 100 people, just like a very small group, you're fine. But if you want to push it out to the public and make it like a whole publicly accessible thing, we want to approve pretty much of every single app that comes through this.
Wow. Okay. Is there any end in sight for the approval process or very ambiguous?
Yeah, I've been like going back and forth, and I've had a couple conversations where I've gotten myself past kind of these different checkpoints of the process. And the last thing that you have to do in the approval process is actually make a YouTube video describing like why and how you are using these certain scopes in the program. And they're being picky on my video. They're like, "Oh, we didn't see this thing." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go back and I remake it or something like that, and I send it back. And it's kind of this back and forth. But I think that is actually because that's the last part of the application. I think that's the last part of the approval. So I'm hoping we're getting really close now. So
Okay. It's like, hey, you've got to use our product in order to, get approval for this. Sounds like a class project or something more than anything.
yeah, yeah, kinda. I mean, they got it super covered in terms of I mean their team. It's basically an email every day I send them, and then I get an email back. I'm like, okay, I got to go change this, and then I email them back, and then same thing the next day. There's something else to change. So
But you
yeah,
just keep moving and shucking and jiving. So, well,
yeah.
hey, one thing you said that is interesting because I kind of came to maybe a similar realization, but maybe in a different way. But how did sales teach you about personal development, and like what kind of insights did becoming a salesperson actually give you in terms of personal development?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, probably sales and starting sales was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done, period. I used to be really introverted as a kid. And, I was so introverted, is difficult to raise my hand in class if I ever did. And my quiet place was like going to the bathroom to just like hang it out. So starting sales was a big deal for me. And I mean, the only thing that I did that was even close to that got me outside of my comfort zone was in high school doing theater, and performing on stage. That was a really big leap for me. And I think that gave me some confidence that I could actually do something like sales. And this isn't just like retail sales. This is in-home presentation sales with oftentimes people you don't know at all. So it is,
Okay. If you
yeah,
don't mind me asking, what kind of sales, what kind of
ki-
sale or product?
kitchen sales and knife sales,
Nice,
cutlery.
dude. You're
Yeah.
doing the old school, like pounding the pavement type thing.
Yeah, it's not quite door to door. It's just through recommendation, but it's the same deal where you go into people's homes and you do the presentation and um yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
Cool.
So yeah, that was difficult. That was tough for me. Um, and in high school, I had studied meditation. I joined a meditation club. Eventually, became the leader of this meditation club, and I thought that was really interesting. I studied Buddhist philosophy. I read books by like Thich Nhat Hanh and these Buddhist monks, and thought it was really interesting. And when I got into sales, my sales manager, again, he comes into play, mentioned Tony Robbins. And this was my first time hearing about Tony Robbins. And I had no clue who he was, but when I looked into what he was about in terms of what he taught, I was like, "Whoa, this exists. There's a whole industry around personal development." That's really cool because I saw a lot of connections between what was being taught by Tony Robbins and what I was learning or what I had learned in Buddhist philosophy. So I saw those connections and I thought it was really interesting. And at the same time, I was going through one of the toughest things in my life, starting sales. And so it made sense for me to read more about it and study it to help me get over hearing no, right? A
Yeah.
lot and having tough points and tough times and down sales weeks and all that stuff. And so really that was my like savior. That was my way to get through it, was reading about personal development, learning about it, implementing stuff. And yeah, that's really how that started and how that helped me.
So what like similarities did you see between like, or I guess how did you use Buddhist teachings and Buddhist philosophies to actually help with not even just sales, but with the getting past the breakers of sales? Like, when you're trying to get out into the ocean and you're just getting pummeled by the waves, how did you use like Buddhist philosophy to kind of get past that?
Yeah. So probably the biggest topic, and what I learned from Buddhist philosophy is when it comes to perception, because a lot of Buddhist philosophy discusses what is real and what is not real and what really is reality. And it comes down to, and they talk about it, and there's different branches obviously of Buddhist philosophy, but a lot of it comes down to perception, right? It comes down to the way in which we perceive what is real and what's not real. And so when it came to sales, I have this belief that if you're able to control your perception about something, about what happens, then you're able to control your reality, or how you feel something, how you take it, and then how you respond to it. So perception is kind of the first step. And In order to do that, in order to notice and in order to choose to perceive differently, basically, in order to choose your perception, you first have to have some form of self awareness or awareness of your own thoughts or mental processes. And that comes from meditation, in my opinion. It comes from being able to learn how to step outside of your first person experience and look at your thoughts objectively. And only when you learn how to do that can you change your perception, because you need to notice what you're seeing incorrectly. And I'll tie this back into sales really quickly as an example. But hey, if somebody says no, then to me, I get to decide, how do I perceive that no? If I perceive it as a, oh no, that person's saying no to like me, my being, my personality, my presentation, then I'm going to take it personally and it's going to cause me to perform worse. I'm going to feel it worse, and it's going to be a bad experience. Whereas if I can choose to perceive it differently, if I can perceive that as a, not it's something wrong with me, but hey, that's a no. Well, why is that a no? And I can actually be curious enough to dig deeper and see something a little bit differently, as opposed to just closing off and then deciding that it's something personal. And that was a super big shift for me.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's trying to have that stuff roll off your back, and you really can't take it personally. I think that was also a big piece for me. One way that it helped me, just in a uh, almost in like a structural or like a practical sense with sales, to remove the personal aspect, was actually increasing my pipeline. So by part of perspective, I guess, yeah, this would be perspective, right? Is if you only have a really small pipeline and you're focusing on a handful of deals, whatever a small amount for your pipeline is, you're so focused on these small group of customers or prospects that you need to sell, and I need to do this, and if I don't sell, I'm the biggest piece of shit in the whole world. And then, but once you kind of get that pool to be bigger, all of a sudden it's, I need 10% of these things to close, instead of I need 60% of these things to close in order to hit my numbers. I need 10. So, yeah, it is. That's interesting. Stepping back, changing your perspective on what's actually in front of you, and it kind of opens up new doors and new ways that you can actually see a path forward and not get stuck in the anxiety of worrying about, you know, am I going to hit these numbers? Is this person going to like me? If they don't like me, and they're going to say no, and then I'm going to be a failure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't seem like a typical salesperson to me.
No.
Do you feel like, what kind of impact do you feel like sales has had on your personal life, like on your ability to live a better life? Or has it made your life worse? That's a stupid question.
Good question. Yeah. No, I mean, sales is just, to be completely honest, giving me a lot of confidence. I think that when you go through the fire in some senses and you learn how to not take things personally, it gives you more confidence. When you have to interact with a lot of different people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, it gives you confidence that you can communicate with pretty much anybody. You have to communicate oftentimes in sales with people that have different viewpoints than your own. And I think that's one of the things that's one of the most valuable things you can get out of sales, is learning how to communicate with almost anybody, no matter what their beliefs, no matter what their background. I think that that's been one of the biggest gifts from sales, is giving me just that confidence to go speak with anybody and know that, like, I know the worst case scenario, or I know what it's like when somebody says no, and I'm no longer like scared of it or afraid of it. It gives you the ability to push yourself further and try things, because you lose that fear of the no in the worst case scenario, in my opinion. So
So if you were going to tell people to like read certain philosophy or a certain person, I mean, where would you have them start?
To get started on, you mean like good resources, maybe like books and people
Exactly.
to follow. So I'd say if you are just getting started with, I mean, in the, so there's kind of the Buddhist space that I dug into a lot, and then there's just like the personal development general space. In the Buddhist space, I mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh earlier. He is actually, that was my intro to Buddhist philosophy because he makes it very relatable, very ground level, understandable by anybody. This is not a hard text to read. If you go into and you look at some of the old like text written for Buddhist philosophy, it's not the easiest to interpret what's going on, but he makes it very easy to understand. So Thich Nhat Hanh is one of them, and he writes so many books about it. Like he has just an incredible range of books that he's written um, for the average person. So I think he's great. If you want to go deeper into Buddhist philosophy, there is Nagarjuna, and I don't even know if I can spell that for you. I just remember the pronunciation from from one of my professors, but yeah, he goes deeper into it basically. So there's him. But then when it gets to just normal personal development, I think that Tony Robbins' classic Unlimited Power is. I was like, wow, that book was awesome. Even though it's a long book, it's pretty thick, but it's worth it. It's worth it. I think he's great. And then I also really like Greg McCown, and he talks about like effortlessness and essentialism. He's like an essentialist, and those have helped me a lot as well. Oh my gosh, the Four Agreements. You have you read that?
Dude,
Yeah.
yeah.
You got to start with the Four Agreements. Honestly, wipe out everything else. Just start with the Four Agreements, and then from there you can go into something like Tony Robbins. But I think that's like a short, sweet, very basic, like but so essential book to read on those topics. So that's where I would go to get started.
What was your and I interviewed my friend Chelsea last night, and I've been telling her for a long time, read the Four Agreements, listen to the Four Agreements. And even my buddy Matt, he won't fucking read it, the bastard. But like she listened to the intro and was like, "Oh my God." Like when you read that first intro paragraph of that book, what was your thought process after you read that?
I mean, I knew I was getting into something when I read the first intro. The book was actually recommended to me by my girlfriend, and I almost never read the books she reads because she reads a lot of fiction. And she was like, no, you're gonna like this one. Like it's kind of on that stuff. And I was like, okay, 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 I'll read it. But yeah, I know.
Fine.
Yeah. I knew I was getting into something, and it was, yeah, I was really taken aback, and I really enjoyed that book because, like I said, the basis that it provides is I don't think you can really get it anywhere else in the way he does it in that book. So highly recommend for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. When I first read that, I was just reading it like, fuck, dude, everything he's saying is like spot on. This
Yeah.
is this is exactly it. You go through these different phases, and a lot of this stuff you don't even realize that is happening to you because it's over such a long period of time. And that's what something that you talked about in your podcast is even going back to the one that you did, not the last one, but the one before it with anxiety, and big part of it to stop that cycle is just being aware of what you're doing. If you've got, you called it what, negative thought stacking, when that stuff is going on, uh, being aware of it is like the biggest thing. And then part of what I liked about Four Agreements, it was very much like kind of a little bit diving into how to start like peeling back the layers and stop uh, just going down the path that you've been going on because it's what you've always done and what the world thinks you should do. Um, But you did say something interesting about meditation. So what does meditation do for you in terms of getting a grip on anxiety?
Yeah, that's a great question. And meditation's helped me so much personally with anxiety because of this reason. And I think the best way I can think of to describe it is your brain, or you can think of your brain or your mind a little bit like a computer where it gets some input and then it has some processing time, maybe some interpretation time. You process it, you internalize it, and then some output. You give some output. And the input that you get is, it's whatever's coming from the outside the world that stresses you out. It could be something you see, it could be something you feel, it could be something you hear, it could be a notification you get on your phone, whatever it is. You get this input. And most people have little to no processing time before they react and output something, if you know what I mean. So they go
Yeah,
directly
sure.
from input to output. And there's almost little to no time to actually take a look at what's going on there. So, what meditation enables you to do, and what it's helped me do, is it gives you more processing time. It gives you more of a chance to step back and actually look at, what is this input I'm getting from the world, and what are these thoughts that I'm having about it, so that you can gain a new perspective on it, so that you can shift your perspective, and then instead of reacting so quickly, you can respond how you would like to respond. And that's going to make a big difference, obviously, in how you feel about it and how you react, and how you respond to other people, because you will have had the time to take a look at it. So, on a more, and maybe it's hard to get very concrete with meditation, but maybe on a more concrete level, when you're meditating, you're noticing your thoughts. Well, you're noticing other things as well. And it depends on the type of meditation that you're doing. But the meditation that I've started with, and that I think is a really great one to start with, is just a very basic breathing meditation, where you're focusing on your breath, and then you might notice thoughts come by, and obviously you just want to notice them. You don't want to get caught and stuck in those thoughts and carried away into a train of thought. And then all of a sudden you come to, and you're like, whoa, where did I go? But you're gaining, basically, by
Yeah.
coming back to that. You come back to, okay, I just got carried away, and everybody does as part of meditation. I got carried away. Now I come back to noticing my breath and noticing my thoughts, and I notice them again, and I'm curious about them again. Maybe I get carried away, but then I come back and I restart the process. And what you're doing is you're training yourself to be able to notice your thoughts as opposed to get sucked away into them. You're training yourself to be able to look at your thoughts from like a third person perspective, so that you get that processing time so you can respond better. That's what meditation has helped me do, and that's what I think it helps other people in terms of training their perspective and looking at their thoughts.
You put a little distance between you and your thoughts, and it kind of it starts to drive home that point that you are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thoughts are just, I don't even know what thoughts are. I have very many of them, and I do enjoy a nice negative thought stack uh, every few
Yes.
days.
Yeah.
Uh, you know.
Yeah. I
So
know
when
what you
you do
mean.
this stuff, what what do you feel like the difference is for you between when you do it and when you don't do it? Do you notice a significant difference?
Oh yeah. I mean, because sometimes, have you ever had that feeling where you react to something unintentionally? Maybe you say something to somebody that you really didn't mean, but it just came out. Or you just have some knee jerk reaction. It's You don't feel good after that, because it it wasn't processed. It wasn't what you would like to have responded. So yeah, I mean, when you get caught up in the moment, maybe you're angry, or you're in a serious situation and you get really sad or upset. Yeah, it takes a toll on you, because you internalize it more when you miss that opportunity, that window of opportunity to notice it and separate yourself from it. then it sinks in a little bit. It sinks in a little bit deeper. You have a little bit of more residual impact from something like that, as opposed to being able to look at it and respond to it. So yeah, the difference is really, you know, feeling it as opposed to guiding it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I noticed with it too, so I try to combine. I'm not great at meditating. I don't do it as often as I feel like I should because I actually have seen the benefits of it. But I do try to write every day, like keep a journal.
Mhm.
Um, and that is kind of like a form of meditation for me to put those distance between what's on my mind and, you know, my own actual mind, to
Yeah.
start to process it and everything like that. Um, but it's kind of interesting doing that and doing the meditations and paying attention to those thoughts that come because I found that they do give pretty good insights into things that you wouldn't expect and things that aren't very linear and don't seem causational but might actually be. So you have something that happened to you, or you're kind of angry or resentful about something and you don't really know why, and you might not even notice that you're that way. And it might even be for, you know, weeks or months. And sometimes actually sitting down just with your own thoughts over time, you can start to pick up the patterns of the type of thoughts that come into your head. And then you can start to kind of like trace back where that came from. So it's like small things. Like if I'm, you know, if I'm like pissed off about something, then I realize that it's because like my wife has a certain thought on something and I haven't been able to reconcile it. And then rather than just stepping up and being like the bigger person about it, I get like all, pissy and shitty about it. And then over time, it festers and it boils. And then the meditation is kind of the way that I can step back and see, okay, I've been having these same thoughts, for 5 days in a row. What is the real deal here? And you can get out of that. You could take back control of the way that you feel and the way that you process it. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's one of the biggest things is after doing that for a while and being kind of consistent with it, and especially like what you just mentioned, you'll journal, and that can help you track and see the patterns. And I think that's so big because there's not like a one size fit all for that stuff. It's people grow up differently and they have different beliefs and they have different experiences that shape the way that they see the world. And it's your job and nobody else can do it other than you to really discover that what is it that you consistently think and consistently believe that creates the outcomes that you then feel and see in your life. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly, dude. All right. So on here, what I want to do is I want to run through your, I want to flip your show's script back on you. Surprise,
Oh yeah.
motherfucker.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I know that you've kind of got a flow. This isn't like set questions or anything, but we already did the intro. So, what is one big and unique mindset tip that you want to actually share with everyone?
So, my biggest mindset tip has to do with my main like core message. And that has to do with it's what I said before, but I have to reiterate it because I think it is just so important. My biggest thing that I can tell people is that if you can learn how to control the way that you perceive the world through your thoughts, through your beliefs, through the meaning that you give, you can quite literally control the reality that you experience, how you feel about it, and how you respond to it. So my call to action is figure out how you think and figure out how you perceive so that you can learn to change it.
Okay. And so, in order to do that, I'm sure this didn't come as the easiest thing to do. I mean, what were some of the bigger challenges to actually getting to that place, to be able to even be aware of this and implement it?
Yeah. So, well, the first step is acknowledgement that,
Yeah.
I mean, sounds like an AA meeting or something like that. But like the first step is to acknowledge that um, there is there is a better way to to think and to feel, to experience than the way you currently are right now. And I mean, if you have, and everybody's human, right? Everybody's had issues, but um, if you can notice that, that's kind of the first step. And I think your question was on the line of maybe what challenges there have been in coming to that. And the challenges come most often from the upbringing and your surroundings and your normal habits that you do every single day. This has been probably the biggest struggle for me, is that you're not always put in the perfect situation, in the perfect environment to study this kind of stuff and learn about yourself, because how many other people do it? Like, how many other people around you are focused on personal development or focused on figuring out how to understand their thoughts better? Like, people don't talk about it very often, but it depends, right? It depends on who you're surrounding yourself with. The biggest challenge to learning this stuff, and the biggest challenge that I've had, is that, I mean, for the past 3 years here, going to college, I've lived in a fraternity. I've lived in my fraternity. And trust me, there's great things about that. And there are not so great things about that. And sometimes the not so great things comes from the environment that you're putting yourself in. And so that's probably been my biggest challenge. And I would encourage other people, right? If you're trying to learn this stuff, try to get around other people that want to as well. Try to get, and if you can't, that's why we have books, and that's why we have people that are teaching this stuff elsewhere, and you can fill yourself with that information in order to get there easier and quicker. um, yeah, that's same thing here. Same thing with living in Portland. I'm living at my parents' house right here, and sometimes, you know, there's conflict or stuff going on in the house that I just don't want to be a part of. I want to be away from it. So I have my own little home office kind of on this floor with a great view. I showed you it earlier, right? And I'm able to separate myself from the environment so that I can learn better, and I can focus and work on this kind of stuff. That's been the biggest challenge, and that's what I'd recommend for other people.
So how do you incorporate the stuff of meditation into dealing with your environment, even when, like, if you don't have a choice? Because that's what I've heard one of the goals of meditation is, and that's one of the most successful ways I've been able to use it, is try to meditate in a space that you can, have some peace and quiet, but the goal is to sometimes bring that into your daily life. So you can almost be meditating regardless of the situation that you're in. I mean, how have you done that? Or do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so when you practice meditation, it's practice for the real game,
Yeah.
which is real life. It's practice for the time where something pisses you off or something comes up, a challenge comes up. That's what it's practice for. And that's what's important to remember, is that if you're meditating, know that that's you practicing. And when it's game time and something comes up, something like a challenge comes up that you would usually overreact to, that's when you need to basically tell yourself, and this is what I've done before. I'm like, oh, it's game time. It's time to it's time to figure this stuff out, because that's what I've been practicing for. That's what I've been
Yeah.
practicing for. So it almost gamifies it, and it does. And that's a really useful tactic in order to bring it into the real world, into the challenges. Is like, if you're working on this stuff, kind of think of it as a game. How well can I deal with this challenge, with this situation? It's kind of that whole growth mindset esque, and that's kind of how it ties back into sales a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and you definitely need to bring some of that goose fraba into sales, especially as things fall apart late in a deal. They get sabotaged by somebody higher up in your company or theirs. Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes when you want to reach through the phone and fucking strangle somebody, you gotta let me take a step back here.
exactly. Exactly.
So, all right. So what is you're doing a lot, dude. You're doing a lot of shit as like a what are you, 20,
21.
21? You're doing a lot of shit as a 21-year-old. And kudos to you, man. And that's all the compliment I'll give because don't fucking stop. You can't settle on that. But
Uh,
as you're doing this stuff, I'll go back to your question. What is like a big aha moment you had in terms of getting into both the tech stuff and then also into this personal development stuff?
I think that so when I was growing up, my dad always used to call me the Renaissance man. He'd say that. It's supposed to be French. I actually went to a French immersion school from like preschool through middle school. So it's a
Oh,
French word.
bonjour.
Yeah, yeah. But it's supposed to be Renaissance, right? And it's what he means by it when he says, "Oh, you're Renaissance man," is that you can do anything, right? Or you could be anything, or you can take on a lot of things at once. You can be a lot of different things. And one of the biggest aha moments that I had was probably the first time I put myself outside of the box in theater. And then again, it probably happened when I got into sales was that that experience of thinking, okay, there's no way I could do this. At least I don't see a way. And then just trying, like just taking the leap, just being like, all right, whatever. If it doesn't work, whatever. Like what did I really lose? And getting over it and taking the leap and finding out what's possible for yourself. So the biggest aha moment I had was when I realized that, you know what, I actually could pretty much do anything if I put my mind to it and I wasn't afraid to just try it without just putting it off and saying, putting up the wall and just saying, okay, that's not possible. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what do you think comes from that moment of going and trying something new that's outside of your comfort zone? I mean, like, what have you seen that do for you?
Well, the well, for one, it builds confidence, right? If you
Surely.
go, if you take on something new, it builds confidence. It also builds your repertoire of experiences. Listen, I mean, if you never try something new, then you're never going to expand or grow or be uncomfortable so that you can grow. And you kind of got to be uncomfortable. There's really no way to get around it. You got to be a little bit uncomfortable in order to grow and get there. But yeah, I think that in order to really figure out who you are in a way, like you gotta be willing to take some risks. Nobody's really going to go very far by staying in their own head and being stopped by all of the excuses that you could let stop you. So I think that what it does for you is it lets you discover a little bit more about you, build your confidence, shape yourself, and it also exposes you to a lot of other people, which then exposes you to a lot of other opportunities. That's one of the things that I've been very grateful for in terms of sales, especially, is just getting to meet so many people. It's awesome. You make so many connections.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you get to see people in all different ways of like walks of life, all different mindsets, all different objections. You get to really see a bunch of different values and things like that.
yeah,
It starts to give you a better perspective of the human experience even because it forces you to get outside of yourself. It forces you to get uncomfortable, and it does actually challenge your beliefs and what you think you know. And it's kind of unique that you're 21 and you've got this kind of perspective. And I'm sure you'll look back when you're 28. That's the furthest I can give you like a old man speech about is being 28 and looking back. But You'll probably realize you don't know shit about anything,
Uh-huh.
but the fact that you know this stuff is pretty good.
Yeah.
I gotta say you're heading the right direction. But dude, so um yeah, just I guess so wrapping this up, is there any kind of piece of advice you'd leave people with? Anything? Yeah, what message do you want to get out to the world? What do you got to say?
Dude, I hate to go back to it. I want to almost try something different, but if I haven't drilled this in far enough about the perspective thing, the thing is, what I want people to know is that all the all the limitations. And look, there are some, like, I get it. Like, there are some, like, really really tough things to deal with and really tough things that people do go through, and I've been very very blessed in my life so far. But what I want to say is that all the limitations that you can come up with and all the limitations other people have come up with, it's all it's all fake in some way. It's all a way of seeing things that could be seen differently. All of it. And so you shouldn't limit yourself from fake BS. You shouldn't let other people's thoughts and beliefs that maybe they've instilled in you or your parents have or your friends have over your lifetime, you shouldn't let those stop you. You shouldn't let that define you. Too many people stick with the same mental programming they've gotten from their parents or their friends, or they get consistently from their environment. They stick with it their whole life. The only way to do that, to jump out of that, is to experiment with a new thought, a new belief, a new perspective. And that's why I think it is so important to learn how to understand what perspective are you coming from first so that you can then change it. So just sum it up, man. Don't let other people's stuff, their thoughts, their beliefs stop you. Learn how to think differently and think for yourself.
Hell yeah, man. Agreed. Agreed. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to you doing your show next week.
Yes,
I'm glad we could do this kind of show swap here. And
me too.
so before we head out, where can people find you? What do you want to have them take a look at? Whether it's social, whether it's your podcast, go for it.
Yeah. So you can find me. My podcast, first of all, is called Control Shift Mindset, almost
It's
like
a
on the
sweet name.
keyboard. Yeah. Almost like on the keyboard, but it's spelled full out all the way. So spelled out Control Shift Mindset. And then that's my show. I do a solo episode and an interview episode every week. And eventually, right, you'll be seeing Chris on, and you can find me on Instagram at my name, so just Michael Boly at Michael Boly, LinkedIn as well, Facebook, all the places. You can even find me on TikTok. I'm starting to put some TikTok content out there. I think that's
Woo!
that's at Boly's Stories. So my last name, then one S that works for the end and for stories, Boly Stories.
It's
But
called the
yeah,
perspective dance. We're releasing a new dance on TikTok.
there it is.
Perspective
Right.
dance.
Perspective dance. Get ready for that. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Um, Website is www.controlshiftmindset.com. So you can find me there.
Hell yeah, dude. And I'll put all this stuff in the show notes as well so people can find you. But thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, it was awesome being on. So I really do appreciate you having me.
All right. Hell yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.